Welcome. What I'd love for you to do, thanks for coming by the way, what I'd love for you to do is to just take 1 minute, stand up, go see somebody else close to you who you don't know and say hi. 1 minute, go. I'm going to start off with a video, and I'll tell you up front, it's not that long. I mean, it is like 8 minutes long, but I'm not going to show the whole thing because that's way too long. I'm just going to show you the beginning, and some of you have probably seen it before, but I love this video. I find it very inspirational.
Why did you get out of bed this morning? What's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your company exist? In the face of bombardment, of manipulation.
All the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers,
they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way. And it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was write it down. I call it the golden circle. In the middle is the word why. The center ring is the word how. And the outside ring is the word what. It's this little idea that distinguishes those with the capacity to inspire versus everyone else. Every single organization on the planet knows what they do. These are the products you sell or the services you offer. Some know how they do it. Whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your USP, it's the things that you think make you special or different or better than your competition. But very, very few people and very, very few organizations can clearly state why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make money. That's a result. Why did you get out of bed this morning? And why should anyone care? As a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. We tell people what we do, we tell them how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, support. But not the inspired leaders, not the inspired organizations. Regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, every single one of them thinks, acts, and communicates from the inside out. They all start with why. If Apple were like everyone else, piece of art.
All right, I'm going to stop there. Chills, I guess, when I watch that. And I think part of it is, if you've seen the Golden Circle thing before from Simon Sinek, that's great. But the way that this is done, there's like heroes in there, in my opinion. Okay, some of those people are heroes to me. And it's because I'm a product person, and I love products. And those people that you saw, they have a way of figuring out the why to get to what they're going to do. And that's what's so different about it. And it does seem like a very simple shift. It's subtle, isn't it? But if you think about it deeply, it really means a lot. And it means, I think, not only just for your company, he said it too, for you, right? Why do you get out of bed every day? Do you go to the place you want to go to do the things that you really want to do? And what's the reasoning? So I just want to share that because it inspires me, number one. But then also, to me, that is one of the primary purposes of a product manager or a product person. I mean, I really liked Melissa's talk this morning, but one thing, I saw her afterwards, and I don't really know her, I've seen her around, and I said the only thing I didn't really like was that she talked a lot about product managers, and she wasn't very inclusive, I guess, in my opinion. And to me, product people are what I like to talk about because I consider all the people here product people. Meaning that we're in a group together. If you're on a team, you have a product manager, you have some designer, you have some devs, you have a QA. You're together in some effort. We call that at Integrate a product squad. And that means it's not engineering, it's not product, it's not design, it's all of us, and we're in it together. And I think, again, that may sound subtle, but that's a huge thing. You know, because you've probably all worked places where it was like, maybe the engineers do a retro, and then they don't invite the product person. That doesn't feel great, right? Because it's a team sport. So to me, that was the one thing I told her. I agree with many things that she said, especially along the discovery lines. And we'll talk a lot about that. But I just wanted to say that. I liked her speech, but that part, it wasn't as inclusive as I would hope. So this is me. I work at a place called Integrate, which is in downtown Phoenix. We make marketing software. Just real quickly, what it does is you're a really big company. You get a lot of leads to sell your services and products. A lot of those leads are crap. We help you make sure they're not. So your leads go through our software. We look at them, we judge them, we enrich them before they move on to your sales and marketing teams. So you can think of how, anybody ever heard salespeople say, these leads suck? Like, yeah, that's what they do, actually, a lot of them. So that's our value proposition. We also, a lot of the companies get leads for a company like Microsoft, they pay per lead. So imagine Microsoft gets 200,000 leads in a year and they pay $100 for each one. And then we reject a bunch of those back to the people who provided them and say they're not good enough, so then Microsoft doesn't have to pay for them. So we have this value prop in that space, of lead generation. We're not dirty marketing, though, by the way. I've been in product management for about 20 years, and I'll just give you real quick. I was mechanical engineer, I was high school physics and chemistry teacher, and then I was a product person. That's where I came. Mostly product person out of all that, teaching about 6 years, engineer 1, and then 20 years in product management. So, I tell you that just to be, there's a journey. If any of you are on a journey to be a product manager or a product owner or a product person, just keep going. There is no official degree. There is, somebody just got to give you a chance. That's really what it boils down to. Someone gave me a chance when I was a high school physics teacher, and they said, we think you're the right person to help us move from being an engineering-driven company to a market-driven company. That's what they said back then. Those were in the bad old days when you wrote the big PRDs and the MRDs and all that garbage, which we don't tend to do much anymore. But that's my heritage. Now I'm at Integrate, like I said, downtown Phoenix, about 250 people. We're trying to double our revenue every single year. As you imagine, that's tough. We do have 10 product teams, 10 product managers, 5 product designers, and then we have a lot of developers and QA. So I'll tell you more about our model of how we're organized, but that just gives you a layout of where we are. So those 10 product teams, I've been there about 14 months. I did hear from one of our developers, I'm not sure if he's in here, Jose, and he told me at lunch, this was very flattering to me. He said, when I watched Melissa's presentation, it really inspired me because we're doing a lot of that stuff already. And I don't say that just for me, because I'm not the only person, but it was a whole crew of people over the past 14 months between dev and product and our design people who are making this happen. And we're not perfect by any means. We got a lot of issues and things to work out, but we're getting there. And so that really, that was cool for him to say that to me sort of unprompted. So that was awesome. Probably about 8 or 10 people in Integrate in the room right now. They do the same thing. I think that's very powerful, right? Because most of you are in that position too. So I'm a practitioner. One of the things we've been talking about ever since I got to Integrate is these words. Has anybody seen these words before? Empowered product teams. Anybody want to throw out a name of somebody who has written a book who loves to say this all the time?
Marty Kagan.
That's him. Yep. So Marty Kagan is very big he's big on these words, empowered product teams. Again, they're words, but they're really powerful. And they fit right into Agile, right? We're supposed to be autonomous. We're supposed to be empowered. And that's what we've been working on at Integrate. And I hope if you asked anybody of the people who work for me, they would feel that way. That they would say, Sean empowers me to be the best at my job. Whether that's product manager, product designer, even a dev. I try to even help there a little bit. So this is a big shift too. Marty also talks about the difference between these teams and he'll call them delivery teams sometime, or even he'll call them scrum teams. And he'll say, and again, I don't mean any disrespect, these are more like his words, but the point is, empowered product teams, they own everything about where they're heading, maybe except for the amount of resources they have. So they're given a certain amount of resources by the company and said, you're responsible for these parts of our solution, go spend the resources in the best ways possible. Right? And socialize that with us. Tell us why you're doing it, and then give us the chance to have input. I was in a session earlier today where I did sort of feel like someone was being negative about stakeholders. Kind of like, the man is trying to keep us down, that kind of thing. And to me, I'm actually a stakeholder now, so turn the table on me, I'm the man, I guess, in that equation. And I hope people don't view, the people above you in that negative way too often. They're just people too. And like, I have a stakeholder, he's the CEO. Our CEO has a stakeholder, is the board. The board, I guess, God is their stakeholder. I don't really know. But anyway, we all have stakeholders, and managing those relationships, that's super important. You'll see that in some of the stuff we talk about in a minute. A great product manager is really good at stakeholder management. Like they know the stakeholders. They know how to talk to them. They know when they need information. They know how to give them the information in the format that makes sense to them, because they don't understand the same words that we understand. They're not dumb though, right? Like pretty smart people typically. So I put this up here just to get that in your minds. Empowerment is really the theme of where I work, and having worked with Marty before and people like Jeff Patton, and then you heard Melissa say it, that's a word that we could all strive for in a product squad, in empowerment, all right? And not micromanagement, right? So think about that. By the way, I love questions because I used to be a high school physics teacher. So raise your hand at any time and say, explain more, or even if I disagree, that's cool. So I don't want this talk the whole time.
It's going to be easier in physics, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, way easier. I never knew physics until I taught it. Anybody else, who took physics in here? Probably lots of us, yeah. I kid you not, I used to do all the things where like my teacher would he'd work all the problems out, you know, and then I would try to like figure out what he was doing, and then I couldn't figure it out, so I'd just go to the back of the book and get the answer. Then I'd try to work backwards, you know, to figure out how he did it. I did that all the time, yeah, and but I never knew it until I taught it, you know. Maybe that's a lesson for us too, right? Like for me, every time I teach this to someone else, I probably get better at it, right? And so anyway, you reminded me of that, you know, that physics lesson that I had. Another physics story. Working with engineers is kind of like being a high school physics teacher. And I tell you that because my mentor teacher, I will never forget this, I was learning how to be a teacher at a high school, and he said, look, Sean, they better think you know what you're doing. Because I was only 22 at the time, and they're like 18, right? And he's like, if they smell fear, man, they are coming for you, you know? And that's kind of true with technology people. Like, let's be a little honest. Who has seen a person get kind of like roasted, for lack of a better word, because people don't respect them, you know, or don't feel like they make great logical decisions, or they don't know the why? How many times you hear that? I don't even understand why the hell we're doing this stuff, right? So that's why I say that example. It's not that engineers or others that are smart are mean, but they have high expectations, right? So product people, you've got to be there with that same deep thinking and understanding where we're going and why we're going there. You'll see a lot of that in the skills in a little bit. But anyway, let's keep going. Thanks for that reminder, though. $5 later. Yeah. So actually, I have the T-shirt on. It's on the back. Our founder is Jeremy Bloom, who was an Olympic skier. You can look him up. His sister, by the way, anybody see Molly's Game? Yeah. That's his sister. So good movie if you haven't seen it, very interesting. But he is an Olympic skier, also played professional football for a couple years, but he loves to make t-shirts. Oh man, this guy's into t-shirts. So when I first got to Integrate, I showed him these circles, and then he's like, all right, we're making a t-shirt, let's do it. And I have one on, maybe some of the people back there have one on too from our team, but so we got a lot of t-shirts that are often around things like this. But this 3-circle thing really, to me, embodies what a product squad would be about. Look at those real quick. There's kind of a few words on there. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this. It's, you know, there's lots of variations, but you got feasible at the top. You got viable over there, or valuable could be a word that's used. And then you've got desirable, or maybe like delightful. Those could all be words that are used. So what I tried to do is on the product squad, I said, all right, who is sort of mostly responsible for that particular area? So by the viable or the valuable, product manager, really. By the delightful or the desirable, that's product designer. And then feasible, or maybe like well architected, or other words you could use, that's the technology side of the house. So we try to live by this, and notice that they're 3 kind of equal circles. We try that, all right? The product manager does have maybe a special place in the organization because senior stakeholders many times hold them accountable for stuff. But I think in the day-to-day dynamic of how you work together, don't use that weapon. You know what I'm saying? Oh, how about Halt and Catch Fire? Anybody ever seen that show? Netflix? Okay, you guys know what I'm talking about. The old kind of product manager, how would you, Joe, right? Joe McMillan was his name, I think. How would you guys describe him, to shout it out? What's that? Dictatorial. I thought you were just going to do the first part, not the tutorial. Okay, anybody else? Visionary. Yeah, he was, right? Man, you are so polite. You guys are so polite. This guy's kind of an a-hole, to be honest, in my opinion. But, you know, I mean, he just like yelling at people, kicking over garbage cans, telling the engineers they're stupid and they can't do it. What's wrong with them? But watch the show if you work in technology. It's on Netflix, and you don't have to watch the whole thing, but watch a few episodes. It's pretty cool. Jeremiah, shout out to you in the back because he told me about it, and I had never heard of it. But anyway, that way of working, I would say scrap it. Like if you got people around you working that way, that doesn't feel right. It's almost like the old school football coach who throws people into the garbage can. Anybody have a high school football coach who was kind of like that? Man, I did. In my high school, they were so mean. They would shove kids into lockers and all kinds of stuff you could never do now. But anyway, we're in. What's that?
The last episode, he fixed.
Oh wait, no, I didn't see it. No. I didn't see it. Keep it down. Jeez. You're supposed to go. Spoiler alert. Tell me, no, don't tell me. Tell other people. Anybody who wants to know, talk to him afterwards, but I don't say it out loud. Sorry, back there. Halt and catch fire, right, Jeremiah? Did I say it right? Halt and catch fire. There it is. Yep. There was another question I thought. Was it here? Oh, same question maybe. Okay. Anyway, thank you. That was good. So I'm just saying, we work together. We're a squad, right? And we have the different parts. And by the way, what I would say about this is, I'm product manager. I am responsible for value. Great. Does that mean if somebody asks me a question about value, I go, just do it, all right? No, it means I'm cool with that. Come ask me, and I should be able to explain it to you. Even better, if someone asks a developer about the value of the why of what we're doing, they should be able to answer it. And that's a great test. If people on your team, all around the circles, can't answer those questions, that's not great, right? So think about that and how this is more egalitarian. We each have a role. We each push back on each other. That's super important. I care about design as a product manager. I certainly do. But I still think the product designer is the main person doing that work. But I do care about it. And I'm probably going to have opinions, as our people would say. Sean's got too many opinions, probably. But OK. So let's keep going. Any questions on the circles? OK. All right. I got to take a drink real quick. Sorry. And I would say at about 35 minutes, my voice is going to go out. So I will need a throat lozenge at that time. Yeah. Yeah, I already emailed my thing to the leaders here, and they'll send it all. They'll make it all available, I think, on the web page or something like that. Some kind of magic. OK. And you might be sitting here going, I thought we're going to talk about product manager skills. We are. That's coming. That's like the second part. This diagram, try to remember this, or when you get the deck, to me, this is the core of how to work in a more modern way. And it's, has anybody seen a diagram sort of like this? Give me a hand. Not that many. Wow, okay, interesting. So I believe that for product people, this is sort of like the, what would you call something that's like really critical but not critical? Linchpin, or I don't know. Anybody got a better word? Kind of dumb. Cornerstone. That's good. Yeah, it goes in the archway. Yeah. This is like the cornerstone of really working in a modern way in a product squad. So simultaneously, what do you have going on? Discovery and delivery at the same time. Right? But they're a little out of phase. See how the diagram's like this? That's on purpose. That's because we need the discovery to be done a little bit ahead of the time we're going to build it. Now, we're not talking about 6 months ahead of time or a year ahead of time. That's terrible, right? Because things will change, and then you just will have wasted all that thinking and discovery. At Integrate, what we try to do is 2 sprints of discovered and groomed backlog, always ready. Now, that means all sized, understood. You have prototypes that the developers have participated in, or at least been in the discovery sessions for. And so everybody's kind of got that shared understanding for that 1 month of work. So if that's in the bag, and by the way, I consider that like table stakes for a product manager to deliver. That you want to talk about value, like if somebody said, what's your job here, product manager? You could say that. You could say, my job is to get us that 1 month or 2 sprints worth of groomed and discovered backlog. And think how valuable that is. Because this stuff doesn't just fall down. If anybody's worked in the discovery area, it's hard work. You know, building stuff is hard too. Delivery, super hard, but so is discovery. And it is so neglected in so many places. Like, how come there aren't discovery coaches? I don't know. Good question. Why do people like kind of stay away from really difficult discovery? Anybody got an answer for that one? You know, most of the time it's like call somebody on the phone and I'll ask you 7 questions, you give me the answer, and you're like, all right, thanks a lot. See you later. Like, why do you think people stay away from story mapping or journey mapping or opportunity canvas or all these other things that are a little harder to do?
It's labor intensive, time consuming.
Okay, labor intensive, time consuming. What else?
It delays execution, which is where people wanted to go.
Okay, let's circle back to that one in a minute.
You don't do it very often.
They don't do it very often. And if you don't do it very often, you forget, you're not good at it, you're not confident, right?
The organization just doesn't value.
Maybe your organization doesn't value it. Melissa talked about that this morning, right? She said, if you can work in a place where they value discovery and delivery, try to do it. Because that gives you the time to really think. And this stuff is hard, man. Like Marty Kagan will say, it's not that great product people are necessarily that smart. I mean, they usually are pretty smart. But it's more like they take the time to think. And how many times have you been in a meeting or a situation where it's like, okay, let's talk through this stuff real fast. We're gonna go through this. And you got all these smart people in the room, and it's kind of terrifying actually, because some of those people are so whip smart, you know, and they're dominating the conversation and the words are flying by. And probably a lot of people in the room are like, oh shit, I don't know what's going on, so I'm just not gonna say anything. You know, that happens all the time. So great discovery means getting the ideas out. How do you get them out like on the table? And I mean like really on the table, like write them down. Anybody ever been to a story mapping session or a workshop with Jeff Patton by any chance? Anybody? Yes. That dude writes stuff down. Like you can't even, he's like, hold on, I gotta write this down. Every single thing you say, he's always writing, and he's like Mr. Sharpie, sticky note guy. He does presentations where he writes everything too. If you've ever seen that, it's like genius. He has a document camera, and he's like sketching the whole time. It's no PowerPoint. He's like, I don't do PowerPoint. I draw, you know. But I mean, think about that simple thing. How can you get people to write their thoughts down in parallel? Because that's usually the secret sauce. We did a workshop 2 days ago, and I just told them that. I said, think about any time you get into a session where it's meaty, hard stuff. How do you actually sit down and talk about it in a way that not one person is dominating? Because that happens so much. How can you get everybody to think in parallel? Even if it's 5 minutes, sit there for 5 minutes, write down your ideas on sticky notes, then we're gonna share. That's simple. That's not even scary in my opinion. That's like making them do the work. Like, you know what I mean? Like help them do the work. So to say, we do Agile, we just figure it out as we go. If it breaks, no problem, we fix it. I'll tell you, at Integrate, we can't do that. We're not that big. We at Microsoft is one of our customers. If we're breaking shit all the time for Microsoft, what do you think is gonna happen? We're done. Like, so that methodology that like maybe Facebook and others have talked about, it kind of works pretty good if it's a social, like a social media app, great. But this is B2B software we're in. We're breaking shit on Microsoft, yeah, they're done, right? You can't do that. So what I like to say is we break stuff, but not in delivery. Where do you think we break stuff? Discovery, right? That's the place. It's all prototyping. It's sometimes drawing on paper. It's inexpensive prototyping in Sketch or whatever kind of tool you like to use. It doesn't matter if it breaks there because you're doing discovery with people and you can iterate it quickly, get feedback, change it, get feedback, change it. It doesn't cost a lot like to do the prototyping. You can break it and then you can get to a better answer on what you're going to build. So that's iterative too. It doesn't, this diagram doesn't show that, but discovery is very iterative, you know. And what I would say around that is try to make time every single week to do discovery. It's not a special event. Every single week you should have lined up 3 or 4 different calls, 5 or 6 different calls where you're talking to people, internal people who might be stakeholders, they really are interested in this thing you're building, or it could be customers who really want to help you build it. I'll tell you right now, customers will meet with you every single week or every other week for nothing. Nothing in return. You don't have to pay them. You don't have to give them a discount. What do you think they get out of it? A better product, and that's what they want. In a lot of cases, their life kind of sucks because of your product. In some ways, right? Like we have that problem. We have different processes that are inefficient. And so we say to them, look, we're going to fix this thing. Will you come with us on the journey over the next few months while we do it? And a lot of them will say, yep, we're in. We want to make sure that thing meets our needs, right? And then when you do it, think about what happens. They're just like over the moon, right? Not only did you get to know them better, you're like on a first name basis with them, but you end up building a solution that meets their needs. And as long as you pick the customers, you know, to talk to that are kind of representative of who your customer base is, you'll be in good shape. Not just one, right? That wouldn't work. Yep.
Well, and now they're emotionally invested in your product.
Totally. And you. These are people, right? Like, again, we always like demonize everybody. That customer's a pain in the neck, so and so. Guess what? That customer's got stakeholders too, and they're just trying to get stuff done. So the more your product, if it's in a productivity area, helps them get stuff done, they look like a rock star, you feel good, win, win, win. The reverse, bad for everybody, right? So the other two boxes I'll point out are the orange one. The discovery is led by product managers and product designers. They're the main people who lead the discovery. But who can be involved or should be involved? The developers, as time permits, right? I know developers are busy building, and that's super important. But invite them. Come to our sketching session. Come to our call with a customer where we're talking about a thing that is broken because of what you guys did. You know, whatever. Like, let them hear the pain. I know one time, I think last company I was at, there was this rule about not interrupting the developers ever. Don't talk to them. If they're busy, don't invite them to any meetings. Shield them from all the pain, basically. And I'm like, why? Like, if I was them, I would want to hear that. I would want to hear where the problems are, so then I, as a creative builder, can fix it. Because that's their nature, right? So I would say don't shield them. Of course, you can't interrupt them all the time. They have a very hard job of solving difficult problems, right? So then the bottom, the delivery, led by dev. So this is critical too. How are you going to break away a bunch of time to lead discovery? By not spending time in delivery. And this is so hard for people. I have known people who are like Jira librarians. Anybody know those people? Man, they're organized and they write the best stories ever, and you got the epics and the stories and the labels and the components and everything in Jira. But if you're spending all your time there and not out in front in discovery, that could be bad, right? You could build a lot of wrong stuff. Jeff Patton also likes to say it's real easy to get nowhere fast, right? And that could be an agile thing, as people have talked about. Melissa talked about that. It's not just go faster, go faster. How about go faster in the right direction? Going faster in the wrong direction is like twice as bad, isn't it? If I'm gonna go 1 mile that way and I go 1 mile that way, now I'm 2 miles away from where I wanted to go. So this is really important. And a lot of this gets back to like slowing down, right? It's kind of funny. I do remember a few companies ago, there was this, we were acquired, and there was, the founder of the company that acquired us was from Texas, Daryl Ward. And man, this guy was a storyteller, let me tell you. But he taught me that. He taught me like, slow down. And when he would tell a story, you were just like, you know, on the edge of your seat. And I think it's because I'm used to so many people who talk so fast all the time, right? And you're trying to like keep up with them. So I would just say slow down in discovery, do the right things. Delivery, okay, let's go as fast as we can, but also slow down there. Like, we're trying to integrate, make sure our developers know that they can raise their hand and they can say, look, this is not the right thing to do right now, and here's why. If we were just to do some work over here before we did this, here's the benefit we would get. And as product people, we're willing to listen to that. So now, that's sometimes hard. Developers sometimes don't want to raise their hand and say that stuff. Others want to say it all the time. But like, try to encourage that part too. They're not order takers. In my opinion, super smart people. They have opinions and thoughts about what we should do and why we should do it. There is a part at the end that's super important, also neglected, measure. Anybody have a place where you kind of neglect the measuring of what happens after you build it? Wow, not that many. Okay, you guys are measuring well then. I mean, we neglect, even at Integrate, we are still neglecting this area. We're trying. We have Pendo for analytics. We have other logging tools that we're trying to use. We're talking about using something called SciSense maybe, where we could aggregate a bunch of data into like a product dashboard maybe. We don't have it yet, but we'd like it. So think about that, because what is, again, I think, who was saying this? Oh, it was Melissa, right? They churned out the dashboard thing that they talked about. Nobody was logging in, and she started realizing to listen, right? So think about that up front when you're building too, early on in discovery. How are you going to measure success? What does it mean to be successful for this thing? What are the metrics that matter maybe that would show you it's successful? Discovery in the end will actually make you go faster if it's really good discovery. You'll build the right things and you'll go faster. Why? There'll be less churn in the delivery area. So if you have great prototypes, that 1 month of groomed and discovered backlog, then people are going to be on the same page. There's going to be less confusion about the actual delivery time. It's not easy though. This is really hard. Yep.
What's the outcome of the discovery? Should be just one page, or conference page, documentation, or
Sure.
tool is ready for
Yeah.
epic ready for?
Yeah. So typically the way we're trying to roll, we don't do it uniformly yet, but I believe is product person, product manager, whatever your title is for them, writing an epic that says here's the big thing. And then as you do discovery, the epic evolves, right? You're learning, putting things into the epic, including the prototype that you built. And then once you've got it to the place where you feel like you're in good shape, you've done enough discovery, you've answered all the questions, now's the time to then meet with the whole team, the whole squad, and say, let's break it down, right? Here's the thing you've kind of seen us doing. Let's really deep dive into it, ask questions. Let's figure out how do we break this down into stories. Does that help? Okay. And key to that is the prototype. Not only does it help you because it's so visual, but also could even be pixel perfect, right? It also could be built with real code in some cases. You can actually build a prototype that's real code that you can actually almost use for production. So there's lots of ways to do prototyping, but that's what I would say for the flow. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you, at your company, do you go back to discovery once you've gone to the delivery mode? Have you ever gone back to discovery? Is that an iterative process, or?
For the same thing, you mean? Like, just,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
Well, we're always in discovery, let's say that. Constantly, because whatever we've discovered that's in the backlog, now we're already looking at the next month or the month after that,
Okay.
trying to do discovery for those
So
items.
the future.
Yeah, so this is like hard for the product. You have to have like this divided mind, right? There's the here and now, and that's going on. You got to make sure that's going well, but then there's also the future. And think about if you're not, it'd be like the CEO who doesn't think about the future of their company. If they're never thinking about that, they're really not doing part of their job. Product people are similar in some ways, not always, but you got to be thinking long term as well. At the same time, you task with this thing right now, which was what makes it so hard. It's a super hard job. Lots of jobs are hard, but product management, you know, I really do think it's hard. I wish there was a degree, you know, maybe not though, because like, can you imagine how bad the degree would be from like, you know, ASU product management bachelor's degree? It'd probably be horrible. It'd be like all people who are doing waterfall, you know, from like forever ago, or they'd be so far behind, you know. It's like, but anyway, maybe they would do it. I always thought that Google should have their own school, or Facebook, you know, have their own university. That's my personal opinion. Okay, so now we're getting into the skills, or sort of like how does it work. So now let's think more about a product manager, if we're going to call it that. What are the principles that they would be responsible for, or the areas of work? And I like to call this like full stack product management, huh? So like developers, yeah? So there's a beginning part, there's vision and strategy you are responsible for as a product person. And it's aspirational, the vision, and strategy is more like what are you gonna do about it, right? Like you wanna get here, how are you gonna get there? What are the things? Product managers and people should be responsible for generating that at whatever level they're at. I'm responsible for that at my level, but it's for the entire portfolio, right? And then Jeremiah or other people we have who are at the level of a director, they have several parts of the solution. They're responsible for vision and strategy there. And then a product manager is responsible for just the vision and strategy in theirs. Sounds kind of like OKRs, right? It's meant to be that way. They all kind of like align up. In fact, you could use OKRs, I guess, in this way if you wanted to. I prefer vision and strategy are the words that I like to use. So that's like looking along, always thinking about that and updating it, and actually, by the way, socializing it all the time. So socializing doesn't mean, hey, let's set up a special meeting, and I'm going to tell you about the vision and strategy, and then be like, all right, we're cool. Don't need to talk about that anymore. I would say it all the time. Like if you're in a stand-up meeting 2 weeks later and say, hey, remember, like I know we talked about already, but our vision is this, and this thing we're doing right now, it's going to help us in this way, just to remind people. Or I was talking to this customer and they mentioned something right in our strategic line right there. I was talking to Jane or whoever, and that's the kind of context that you can keep on tying together as a product person. Because remember, you're a leader, right? A product person is a leader, and leaders do this. They talk about this all the time. Our CEO, sometimes it's ad nauseum. Like seriously, like same thing over and over again, but he really believes in that repetition part. It's kind of like your parents, like it used to be. Wash your hands, don't forget. So that's important. And then look what's below it. Discovery. We talked a lot about that already. So leading discovery, you know, with help from people in your product squad, super important. And there's the metrics that I like to use. Product managers should spend 65% of their time in discovery. Think how hard that would be. You got to have the right people who let you do that at your company. That takes the leaders letting you do it. I am trying to make that space for the people at my company, but even for them, it's hard sometimes. It really is. Things encroach, right? They're always encroaching. But it is up to you as a product person to make that time, is what I would say. I have a good friend from Amex who's in product, and he likes to say, he hates the word busy when people say, I'm busy. He says, busy is for bees, all right? You're a person, you've got a brain, like, don't say you're busy. Like, structure your time. Make sure you're doing the right things. Take control, that kind of thing. So I would say that about getting to that. And then you see the 2 sprints thing already. I already talked about that. That's the other thing in discovery we're shooting for. Delivery. So I already mentioned this with the circles, right? PM responsible for value, design. Oh, that's not the right word. I meant to put delightful. Sorry. Product designer is responsible for it being delightful. And then I noticed that we support the developers as they build. So they have questions, right? We're in a sprint. They're going to say, what about this? What about that? Or this didn't work out quite the right way. What should we do? We're of course, answering those questions all the time. But if we're right in the middle or telling them, hey, I don't think you should code it that way, that's not good. Or what if you're in a place where you do QA all the time as the product manager? Not great. That means you don't trust the people who are charged with QA to do their job. And maybe it's a stopgap. Maybe you got to do it right now. But like if over the long term, that's going to get you, right? Yep.
So we got a random question. So currently, where we work,
Yep.
we have product manager, product owner, developers, scrum master on our team. So I'm trying to figure out the product designer, who that role is. Is that UX or is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it used to be maybe called interaction designer or UX UI designer, that kind of thing.
So what do product owners do?
Well, the way that Marty Kagan, myself believe, is that product managers are the full stack, so that product owners wouldn't be in that position. In other words, traditionally, maybe product owners are on the delivery side, so they're working more closely in that orange box with the developers to execute on the sprint right now. In this model, that isn't a position. Instead, product manager is responsible for all of it. But guess what we have to do to make them able to do that? How could we say you're responsible for everything from the top of this diagram to the bottom? Any thoughts?
You give people roles of PO.
Could we? How about this? Narrow what they're responsible for, right? Like at our place, we really firmly believe 1 product manager per team. If you're at a place where they're saying, we need you to run 4 Scrum teams as a product manager, I would run for the hills. Like, I'm serious, that can't work. It cannot work. If you got 4 developers on each team and you're trying to do 4 of them, you're gonna be in that orange box all day long. And if that's what you love, okay, cool, maybe that's what you like. What I'm saying is, these are the words from people who have been around to all the best software companies and the way that they do things. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it because of what we watched that movie at the beginning, right, with Simon. The why, like that why, if your squad is responsible for this whole stack, think about how good that feels. And if you're responsible for it over a period of time, think how good that feels. Because you own it then. It's like your thing. You made a difference. So, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Question?
I have a question.
Yes.
On roles, can you comment on your perspective on product marketing manager role?
Yeah. Yeah, here's what I always wished, but I've never really had it happen very well, is that product marketing managers were also in the mix. Maybe they were like a product designer, where they had 2 squads, and they could go between them. They would be expert users of the product. I would love that, but it doesn't seem to happen very much. Like, we struggle with that at Integrate right now, where we don't have enough product marketing managers. So what do you think they do? New thing coming out. Hey, will you write us up some stuff? And then we'll wordsmith it, right? They do that all the time right now, and I really don't like that model. I wish they really loved product as much as we do. They were into it. They could use the product as experts. They could demo it as a sales demo. Maybe that's like a really high bar for anybody who's a product person. Could you demo your solution for a possible sale? So I would love it if they could do that, because then they'd be more into it as opposed to being sort of like adjacent. And it's like the people report to different groups, that kind of thing. We've been able to navigate that with engineering and product. We're a lot closer. But I always call the product marketing people my cousins. They're like my product marketing cousins. I don't get to see them that much. I wish I could see them more, So, did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. purple box outcomes, that's the one I mentioned is neglected a lot. We are, like I said, we're really struggling with that one a little bit right now. How do you find time for all this stuff? It is hard, but I do believe that's super important, and I would think a product manager is responsible for that too. At least defining one metric. If you could just define one thing that you're going to measure for this new thing that you're building, and then measure it and see if it made a difference. Maybe that's all you have to do, just one thing. Hopefully it's not just how many times it was used, because that's a little, not the biggest metric, but yeah.
Shouldn't the metrics naturally emerge from the why you're making the product in the first place?
Yeah, you'll have, I agree with that. You'll have metrics that are maybe a little higher level, but maybe you'll have some metric that is specific to this particular thing. It could even be related to something you weren't quite sure about in the end. Maybe you ended up building it and you got it to this certain place, and then you could even put a button in it that doesn't go anywhere, and you could do an experiment where they touch it and you count how many times people touch it, and a little window comes up that says, this feature's not available yet, but coming soon. Would you like to hear about when it's built? You can do stuff like experiment like that to try to figure out, be creative. I like that about what Melissa was saying, be an experimenter. Like have that mindset of I'm trying to learn, there's questions to answer, and I answer that through building stuff and then measuring, and then you fix stuff, you change it, whatever you have to do based on the data. It's a whole different mindset, like really. So, yep.
So Marty suggests that 50% of at least 50% of our ideas are bad.
Oh yeah.
And if we're not looking at those outcomes, we don't realize it, we don't spend it, and we don't know how much of our time we're wasting.
Totally. I think that's a huge thing too, is accept what you just said. You don't have all the ideas. Nobody does. And also that's kind of liberating if you think about it. You don't have to hold the burden on your shoulders of having all the ideas. It's okay to say, I don't really know right now. We're doing discovery in that area and we're going to find out. As long as you do find out, right? If that's all you ever say and then you never find anything out, you'll be shown the door. But I think that's a shift too in terms of how things have changed. When I first started product management, I was scared, man. I really was. My boss would come into a meeting and say, Sean, what's up with that product? And I'd have to, it's all set, no problem, it's gonna launch, all that stuff. And it's like, where's the PRD? It's like, oh, okay, it's almost done, page 27. Like, so, it's changed a lot, but I really love the way it's changed because we're all in it together. Nobody has to have all the answers, nor should they. I've worked with designers before, for example, I'll pick on them a little bit, who think they're building the Mona Lisa. You have to say, this is not art, okay? This is software for these people to do this thing. That's what it is, all right? And why do I say that? Because if it's art, think of the pressure. You know what I mean? It's like, this thing's gotta be perfect. It's gotta be the most beautiful thing ever. It actually doesn't. Right? What it has to do is solve the problem incrementally, and then we make it better over time. And again, how great would that feel if you're not that person who's trying to create the Mona Lisa anymore? So, and also with the help of everybody else too. Even a designer doesn't have to create all the designs. I mean, I can draw. I can show people what I think it should look like, and then a designer can take it to the next level. So think about that. Has anybody heard of something called growth mindset before? Yeah, I would say read up on it if you haven't. But growth mindset is all about what do you do when times get tough, right? When are we done here? 2:15 or 3:15? Sorry, is that right? Okay. So what do you do when times get tough? And if the answer is I move on to something different because it's too hard for me, you don't have a growth mindset. You have a fixed mindset, it's called. So when the going gets tough, do you dig in? Do you work hard? And it trickles down to how we talk to everybody. Think about anybody ever said to a kid, "You're so smart." It's actually not a great thing to say. Why? Because it's like this intrinsic thing inside of you. You could instead say something, "I know that was really hard. I saw how you worked on it and you got there. That was awesome." That rewards growth mindset, right? The work, the progress. And you think about us as product people, that's our every single day. Like if you're just trying to make everything perfect and you don't have to struggle both getting better yourself or making your product better and make everybody feel like you got everything, perfect, that's going to be an issue for you like in the long term. Okay. I think let's see what's after this, I don't remember. Oh, I think I'm gonna skip this, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna go to the skills now. So could I get my wonderful assistants, they're gonna hand out a handout, they're gonna bring it around. And while they're doing that, I'll just kind of set it up. So 2 companies ago, I worked at McKeever, which is actually out here. They got a booth, great company. If you ever get a chance to work there, I would do it. They do a lot of great things. But this is where I learned a lot of these great techniques. And guess why I learned them? Because Marty Kagan and Jeff Patton were consultants at Workiva once a month. So they came to the company and they talked about all this stuff all the time, and I got to learn right from them. So it was amazing. So this list that we're passing out, and I hope there's enough for everybody. If there's not, you might have to share. I think I had 120. And if not, I'll email it to anybody afterwards. But this list came from Marty Kagan when he came to Workiva and said, I want to help you guys build world-class product teams. So there's 20 skills on here, and we're just going to go through each. We have about 12 minutes or so. We'll go through like them group by group. I'm not going to, say all the words for all of them, but what I'd like you to do is, the first section is knowledge, and you can see it at the top. There are 6 skills in knowledge. Just take a minute and read through the statements of each skill in knowledge, and then we'll chat for a minute about them. Okay, so these are all knowledge things, meaning you have knowledge of the market, knowledge of the customer, knowledge of product, knowledge of technology, design, and business/financial knowledge. When you read through anything in there, did anything strike you as interesting or different than what you might have expected? Anything? Oh, geez, a typo. Thank you. Let me know, I'll fix it. Good one. If you think about it, these things are kind of like table stakes for you to be respected, is what I would say. Because you got to be the go-to person. Like a lot of the statements say, you're the go-to person for market knowledge, go-to person to know our customer. You know the product inside and out, including where the bodies are buried, including where to avoid when there's a demo, right? So you know it to that level, and people need to feel that. If they don't feel that, again, your respect level is not going to be where it needs to be, and you can't be the leader that you need to be. All right? Same thing for the 3 on the right. Technology, design, business, and financial. It would be different people maybe, but think about what I said earlier where technical people want to understand that you know technology. You know enough about it that when you make a decision, you can kind of tell them why you think that's the right thing. Or maybe they're building something in a certain way and you kind of ask a question about that. Why are we calling the database to get that info? I thought it was already, resident on the device. That's the kind of level I'm talking about, not why is your code structured like this, right? You don't have to know that, but knowing the other kinds of things is important. Design, I said that. I think the people you work with, they should feel like you have good design ideas. Why? Because you are a user of software. I hope, if you're building software, I hope you're using software all the time, and I hope you're like an aficionado of software, where you look at the way different software works, and you kind of go, huh, that's clever. And maybe you steal that idea for your own product someday. I was in a thing earlier, the guy was doing a polling, I forget the name of the website, Minty, and it was like a bar chart like this, and every time it was trying to rank them from the biggest bar chart to the smallest, and every time that would change, because it was live polling, the biggest bar would go to the top. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, that's awesome, give me some of that. Right? You gotta have some of that magic in your software. Anybody use Zoom these days? What about that magic in Zoom where you touch the button when you're in a meeting room, and it knows you're in that room, and it just shares your screen to the TV without joining a meeting? You might not have that version of Zoom, but it exists. It's a platinum version, apparently. But no, amazing stuff. You just kind of sit there and go, what the hell just happened? It knows I'm in this room. Maybe it's creepy, I don't know, but like that's amazing, right? And then business and financial. Who do you think is going to want you to have that knowledge? The executives are going to want you to have that. You need to know the business. How are we spending our money? How much does your product cost? To actually, like maybe you have services that are built into your product. You should have a thought, you should know that. Know where the costs lie, right? Know about the business. When you make a business case, you better like talk about it in business terms to the stakeholders. So 6 knowledge skills. Any questions? Okay, let's go to the next bucket. I think there's 6 of these as well. So individual skills. I think there's 4 on the front, 2 on the back. Okay, individual, team collaboration, product evangelism, time management, stakeholder management, community management. You should have a sense of how they need to be communicated to and what they need to feel comfortable. If they're not comfortable and they don't feel like you're moving the ball forward, that's not a good thing for you, right? Like I think on here you might have noticed there's like NPS language. Do you see that? That's kind of important. Meaning like if somebody asked your boss or somebody else on your squad, would you recommend Sean as a product manager to work with at another company with you? And if they say, That's not great. You know, like you want that NPS that they would recommend you to be super high, because that means you're providing a lot of value, just like when you use NPS for your company or your product, right? So think about that. I mean, somewhat time management. We've got to be great time managers. So many things to do. You got to take control of your time. I don't know which other one. I think there's some in here. Isn't there something about like being energetic? Was one of them like?
Evangelism.
Yeah, evangelism. Like you're the Energizer Bunny. Look, energy matters. All right. I have worked with product managers who told me, look, I don't need to be energetic. I don't need to even like get these people excited. They get paid a lot of money and they should just do their job. That's bullshit, okay? Like it really is. These people are smart and they get paid a lot of money, but that's not enough. Like be with them, be a human, like talk to them, have fun with them, know something about them. When I was a product manager, I had a rule. I was gonna know something about every single person on my squad, as hard as it was. Because some people don't really want to talk about stuff, but I was gonna find one thing that I could say to James, hey, how's that stamp collection? Or whatever it was, you know, like I was gonna find out. That was my mission. And why is that? Because then I connect with them. Hopefully it wasn't fake. I don't want it to be fake. One thing that I'm interested in and this person is interested in as well. Super important. So that energy matters, right? It really does. Any other ones you were trying to short, but any other ones you read that you were kind of like, huh, that's a little weird?
Community management, is that your user community?
It is, yes. Like you should know your user community. Guess what? If you're doing a lot of discovery, you know a bunch of them already. You know their first name. You might be able to even call them and say, hey, tomorrow we'd like to chat with you about something. Is that cool? Our last company, education company. We built a brand new product for middle school teachers to teach math and ELA. We got 10 teachers to meet with us over 6 months, every other week for a half hour, during school hours. Anybody been a middle school teacher? Holy shit, right? I mean, that's saying a lot, right? They were like, yes, we'll do it. Why will we do it? Because we think it'll make it better for our students. That's pretty cool, man. Like that says a lot. Okay, let's keep going. Execution. So this is like, how do you get stuff done? These are pretty common, right? Like this is something probably you might want everybody to have at your company. Sense of urgency. You're a great meeting facilitator. That's what a framer means. Like nobody likes BS meetings worse than technology people, right? Especially builders. Because builders, they're like, man, I'm building stuff. I don't want to be over here talking to you guys. I got these problems to solve. So make sure your meetings are worthwhile. It's well laid out, all that. Do you have good judgment? Like when it's time to make a tough call, hey, this is a P1 bug. If you make everything a P1 bug, oh, dude, that's not going to be good, right? Like your judgment on what a bug is in concert with others and how it needs to get fixed, or if it should even get fixed, super important, right? How do you prioritize this feature over that one? How do you wedge this little thing in the midst of the other things you're doing to provide some value? All that is under that like product judgment thing. And then attitude too, right? Do not get into the negative cycle, right? Like it's so easy to do. By the way, teachers are the worst at this if you haven't been around teachers. So negative sometimes. Like go to the teacher staff room sometime at a school. Man, I wish they'd have a camera in there. It'd be like, oh my God. Bad Teacher. Was that a movie? Yeah, it's kind of like that. But like be positive, you know what I mean? Your company is asking you to be a leader. Leaders are not negative. They're just not, you know. If they're publicly negative, I would argue you're not really being a leader. Okay, last one, because this one's not something everybody else would have. Whoops. Process. So here's where all the discovery stuff comes in. Super important. By the way, I have an expanded version of this, all right? And what the expanded version is, every single one of these 20 skills, it has a, what would it be like if you were a number 1, a 2.5, a 5, a 7.5, or a 10? These are all 10s. So I can send you that. Like you can connect with me on LinkedIn or something, or I don't know, come up here, write down your email address, whatever. I'll send it to you, and if you want to use it, great. We're trying to use this to integrate as our way to judge how are we as a team and individuals. And then what do? Pick a few of the skills and try to get better. That's all we're doing. It's not anything crazy, but how can we pick a few and get better? But anyway, discovery, what's the difference between customer and product discovery? People ask that a lot. Customers, I'm trying to learn about the people. What do they like? Where do we fit in? What are their struggles in life relative to their work? So sometimes you do that kind of discovery. That doesn't even have to do with the product. Melissa talked about that a little, right? When they were doing the discovery with the chefs and stuff like that. But then there's the product discovery, which is like, hey, we think we're going to build something. And now we're going to actually talk more specifically about how we're going to alleviate a problem. And then you start getting to a place where you have prototypes and you're showing it to people and iterating. That's the customer part. Optimization has to do with, do you say no sometimes to things that you know will just complicate your use patterns because you don't think it's worth it? So you resist. You resist Me Too features. You say, look, we're only going to put things in that matter, because otherwise we're going to clutter up our application and it's going to be harder to maintain and more expensive. And then the last one is product development. So that one is like, how do you work with a team? As a product person, you better know how to interact. So this has a lot to do with Scrum or Kanban or Agile. You need to be able to work with them in ways that they feel good about working with you, right? So it's relational, it's knowing the ceremonies, it's lots of different things like that. Okay? All right, I think we made it just under the gun here. Oh, that's the same thing we already looked at, so I sandwiched it. And that's it. So if you, I don't know if we have any time, we probably don't. Nope, right on time. So thank you very much. If you have questions, come up and talk, or you can email me or whatever.